Hey, welcome to the Cashing on Creativity podcast. I'm your host, Bruce Elridge. Today, we're going to be talking with Miriam Schulman. Now, Miriam was in the corporate world. She changed over to becoming an artist, which I also done, so I know how that transition goes. And we're going to talk to her about how she did that today and what life is like as an artist. All right, everybody on the line, I've got Miriam Schulman from, I believe, New York, right? Miriam, is that what you're from? Yes.
Yeah, New York City.
New York City. Welcome to Canada. You should have seen the snowstorm that went by about an hour and a half ago. I'm thinking, I hope it doesn't take out the power right before our interviews. It was crazy. Tell us what your role is today. What are you're an artpreneur, or at least that's the copy of your book. Tell us what you do, and then we'll get into your story.
Okay, so if you want to fast forward to 2026, I now coach artists on how to monetize their art. But I've only started doing that, not only, but I've been doing that for the last 5 years. I've been a professional artist for the last 25 years.
Okay.
So, and I haven't always been an artist. So do you want to dive into that story?
Yeah, I think you're on Wall Street, if I've read things correctly, right?
Oh, yeah.
You kind of started before your art career. Tell us how you transitioned from that to the arts. That's interesting.
I wanted to be an artist, but I was told you couldn't make a living that way. And I believed the people who told me that. Dude. So I was like, okay, how can I make a living? Oh, Wall Street, they make a lot of money there. Good, I'll go there. But after 9/11 happened, I knew I couldn't go back to that world. Right. So that is when I decided not to do that. I wasn't completely sure that I could make a full-time living from my art when I first started. So I was painting on the side. I took a job teaching Pilates at a gym, and the gym was teaching me how to sell personal training packages. And that's when I had my aha moment. I knew that what I was learning to sell for the gym, I could use to sell anything, including art. Yeah. So that was over 25 years ago. And I've been making a sustainable living as an artist ever since.
Were you always passionate about art, even as a kid and stuff? Like when you were at Wall Street, were you doing art on the side, or
I was.
You just made a total switch?
No, I was doing art on the side. The only time I didn't do art on the side was the few years where I was working and I had a baby. Right. So that left no spare time at all. Right. But before I had babies, I was doing art on the side.
Yeah, it's funny because I was told the same thing. I've been drawing since I was 10 years old, and I got into the trucking industry. That's why my other podcasts and stuff is all in that industry, because I was told you had to go get a real job. No one said, hey, go see how Norman Rockwell's making a living or anything like that. So right? I think that was the day back then. That's back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, whenever anybody was coming up. That's kind of the theme there. Go get a real job. And now, I don't regret it because that industry has been very good to me over my lifetime, but I'm glad to be in the creative as well. What type of art do you do? What's your favorite? I think I saw that you were doing a lot of watercolor. I don't know if that's all you do or...
Yeah, I mean, I've experimented with lots of things over the years, but I'm known for my watercolor portraits. So what had kicked off my professional career was I painted my son in his Batman costume, and I hung that in the foyer. And I didn't put my son up to it, but he would bring his friends over, show them the portrait. His friends would bring their moms in, show them the portrait, and that snowballed into my art career.
Yeah. I think that's how we all start. I know I started doing pet portraits and painting people's houses down the road and all of that kind of stuff. And before you know it, at what point did you switch and say, I can do this full time? I know the Pilates thing you were teaching that, but as far as the art, at what point do you decide, hey, my art is good enough that I think I could go and do this? Is there a point or point in life or?
Okay, so I fully believe that decision has to come first before the proof. So a lot of people think, when I make the money, then I will, which is fine. You can do it that way too. However, you still have to have the mindset that this is what a six-figure artist looks like. This is what a self-sustaining artist looks like. I am an artist. I believe in this. And I talk about this in my book. It's the belief triad. Right. And you'll hear people say this, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your art. I know you and your audience have heard people say that a million times already, but the part that a lot of gurus leave out is you have to believe in your customer.
Yeah.
You have to believe that the audience is there and they want your art. That's the part that people don't focus on enough, is focusing on your customer.
Right, right. For me, I'm actually the other side. I found that I was starting to use my art within my job at the time, the last few years before I totally quit and became a full-time artist. I was a supervisor of the fleet, and I was using my art for newsletters, and someone retired, I was doing a picture of them or whatever, and that was kind of thing. And I think I had a safety meeting one day, and I said I'm going to be a bit late because I was going to set up at my first trade show for the arts. I wasn't working the table. I was just kind of setting it up and then leaving. And I think at that point I realized, I'm going to give this a try. Like, I think if I could work that hard for myself, for somebody else, I think I can do it for myself. Yeah. And it's been almost 20 years. So that worked. That worked for me for sure. So now you're helping other artists, and that's exciting. Tell us how you do that. What type of things do you do to help them?
Okay, so there's two things that have to change in order to make a successful art business. The strategy, 100%. You have to have the right strategy. And it's also the mindset, because I can give you all the exact steps in the world, but if you're sitting there thinking that won't work for me because, and you don't do the thing I tell you to do, because you don't believe me, or you don't believe in yourself, or you don't believe in your customer, or you don't believe in your art, you'll sabotage. So this is a very common thing. It's not because you're making excuses. I didn't say excuses. It's because we all have a brain that has evolved for survival, not goal achievement. And anytime we are trying to do something that makes us uncomfortable, our brain's going to come up with reasons why that won't work, because it wants to keep us safe in the cave. And the more creative you are, and we're all creative, and the smarter you are, the better you will be at coming up with those stories that sound real to us, that will keep you from taking those actions. But we can talk about what actions to take. Would you want to focus the conversation on that, Bruce? Yeah, what do you?
Sure, we can get into that. I want to. I've got something. I listened to your podcast this morning. I listened to a couple of your podcasts this morning, there's one that you were talking about an abstract artist, and I was going down I listen while I go for my walk, and I was walking down the trail laughing because you were talking about abstract art and how you didn't kind of really see that. And I'm exactly the same way. Every time I try abstract, I keep changing it until it looks like something, because I haven't figured out, how to explain it, when it doesn't look like something. And I think you were having the same challenge or explaining the same concept on your podcast this morning I was listening to, and I'm thinking, wow, she gets it. I'm not the only one that cannot do abstract art or not feel like
I'm trying to think of what you're referring to. I think what you might be referring to is my husband thought that it's harder to do realistic art than abstract art. And I told him, no, it's much easier to do realistic art because you know what the goal is.
That's
right. The goal with realistic art is to make it look like the thing. But with abstract art, that's not the goal.
That's
right. The goal is to make it look good. So it's much harder to be an abstract artist. I think that's what I was saying on the podcast.
That's right. I think it was your tip for 2026. I think it was the last one of December that I was listening to this morning, and then I listened to another one after that on AI, which we'll get to at another time. But let's talk about the artists. There was one thing that you were talking about to help other artists succeed, their story. This, I think, is something that's crucial. I hate to say this, but many artists are, and this show is musicians, visual artists, authors as well. Many are very bad at marketing themselves. They're great at their craft. Boy, when it comes to marketing, some of them really need some help. And I think a lot of it's the story. We hear things like your story or pick your 4 pillars of your business. And a lot of us going, I don't know. And I just paint with a brush. I don't know what the pillars are, so we get into this thing.
And there's a lot of bad advice out there, Bruce. Yeah. Like, there was somebody I was listening to, I'm not going to say who it is, obviously, because we don't do that. But somebody was saying, oh, you need to post what your mission is as an artist. I was like, so what's your mission? You like who you're painting it for? Your mission is, I paint for moms who like teal. That makes no sense at all. Like that makes sense for somebody like me. My mission is to help artists, but not for an artist. You're not painting for just or it doesn't have to be painting, creating, writing, whatever it is. You're creating for a taste level, not for a certain type of person. Sometimes it is.
Yep.
But what I see people make the most mistakes on, I'm going to say people, so I'm not thinking only of visual artists, but we're thinking about writers, musicians, whoever it is when they're talking about their story, they get really stuck on the thing. So if we're looking at Nike, you do not see a Nike commercial where they're talking about the sneaker because they're selling motivation.
Yes.
That's what they're selling. Just do it. They're not saying, oh, the laces are 16 inches and the instep is this high. And what are artists doing? Artists are saying it's a 23-inch encaustic, or it's a whatever the thing is. And it's not just artists who do this. I see coaches who do this too. But what you're doing is you're describing the plane. Oh, the plane has 434 seats. Yep. No, you're selling a trip to Hawaii. Let's talk about what it feels like to get to Hawaii, not how big the plane is, not how many rows there are, not the size of your canvas. You're not selling medium, you're selling meaning. Right, like I said, It doesn't matter if we're talking about sneakers or paintings or music or anything else.
Yeah, I find that comes from inside, I think, and I don't think a lot of us go inside ourselves far enough. I used to teach watercolor and acrylic, and I had a drawing class for beginners. I had a lady in the class who's a local artist here now. She's very successful. And I am not a trained teacher. I just was teaching because I love to teach. And that's, when I started my career, you need money as an artist. That was one way to bring in money as an artist. And I'm teaching this class, and I think I was doing like a basic, how to draw heads class for adults. And this lady said, do you mind if I draw a turtle? And I said, no, because I'm not a trained teacher. So, hey, as long as you're drawing and it's a drawing class, I think we're successful, So I asked her, I said, why do you want to draw a turtle? What's the big, because I'm in Burlington. She was in Oakville. Oakville is not by the sea. We do have a lake. You're not going to find, it's like, so I said, what's the, well, it turns out that she used to live in the Caribbean. She's of German descent, but used to live in the Caribbean, and she was a biologist. She knew all about turtles and and I said, well, do that. She did this beautiful painting of a turtle. And I said, that's what you should focus on. And since then, she's only does underwater art now. And in Oakville, she's the only one doing turtles and, dolphins and sharks and stuff. And she knows about them because she was a biologist. And I think that was her big, for me, it's trucks. I used to be a truck driver. A lot of my work is on the truck driving community and that kind of thing. So I think sometimes you really have to start with you and go, what is my inspiration and my story for the paintings I'm doing? What do you think?
Yeah. Yourself is a great starting point as long as you don't lose focus on your customer.
Right.
Because you want to do trucks because you love trucks, but the fact that you love trucks is not the reason why someone's going to buy your painting. It's going to be because they love trucks.
Right.
And this example is a little straightforward and you don't make that mistake. But I see too many people saying, if I were trying to sell art this way, well, I used to work on Wall Street, but I just love to paint. And I put joy in every single one of my paintings. Yeah. That's not what people want to buy. They don't care if I like to paint or if I hate every minute of it. It's what do they care about? What do they care about? So they need to care about trucks, and they need to care about underwater life, and they need to care about turtles, and they need to care about what it is that you're creating. So yes, it starts with you and what you're passionate about, inspiration place. That's when you're creating it, you can focus on that. But once you go to sell it, now you have to focus on what your customer wants, what your customer desires.
Yeah, very strong point. So what are a couple tips of someone trying to figure out what their story is? Maybe they don't know. Maybe, there's a lot of us that probably don't know. They're painting, let's say someone's painting landscapes. There's a lot of landscape artists in our area
Yeah.
here. So someone's painting landscapes. A lot of them paint up north of the city here, a couple hours north. That's kind of cottage country for us. So there's a lot, you can go to the art galleries and you'll see a lot of art based on that type of landscape. What how should someone maybe start figuring out their story? Maybe just a couple tips for them to get started. We mentioned inside inspiration, but I'm sure there's more to that than you know
Yeah, it's with artists in particular. I like to do an excavation when I'm working with a client on their entire life because it all matters. And since you brought up landscapes, I'm going to give an example because it's easier to see things through examples of two artists who are both landscape artists. The way they create is different, but they both focus on the sky. And you're going to see from their stories how each of these artists, their stories are very different. So one artist, she wasn't quite even sure what her through line was. She says, "Oh, Miriam, I like to paint. I like to draw clouds," and she does very detailed drawings of clouds. And I also like to draw buildings. And so
yeah,
we looked at her art. I says, "Yeah, but do you notice that everything is looking up?" And then as we were talking, I unearthed that how passionate she is about people not looking down at their phones, about people being present, about people noticing, about people looking up. And then that became the through line. So now suddenly the clouds and her architectural drawings had the same through line through both. It was all about looking up and staying present. So that became her story. And you can see how now that matters to her customer. It wasn't like I enjoy doing detailed renderings because that makes me happy, which, when I put it that way, it sounds ridiculous, but I've read those artist statements over and
right.
over again. Okay. Now, the other artist, she also does a lot of skies, landscapes, sometimes has a little bit of an ocean. She's a West Coast artist. And when we were talking about it, she was sharing with me trauma from her childhood. And we're talking about her childhood. She had unfortunately had a lot of abuse as a child, and she lived in San Francisco. And she was sharing with me a memory of going up to the roof, and how she used to go up to the top of the roof and just imagine that she could fly away. And I said to her, "Bonnie, that's your connection to the sky. The skies are your escape. And the people who want your art, that's the signal that you need to be sending to them, is your art is a portal for them for that same escape. Doesn't mean they have to have the same sad childhood that Bonnie did. Doesn't even mean that she needs to talk about her sad childhood. But the way she talks about her art, you can see. So the artist who had the abuse in her childhood is Bonnie, and the other artist I was talking about is Shayna. So you can see how their stories now, even though they're both painting landscapes and both focusing on the skies, they have very different messaging around their art. And it's not focused on themselves, it's focused on the experience of the collector.
Right. Yeah. So that if they can see that in theirs, or if it means something to them in the collector's world, they're going to be more about purchasing that art from that artist because
Exactly. And it's about sending out those types of signals in the way that you talk about your art so that the person can connect to it. So Bonnie talking about the sky as a portal for escape. That's the way she's going to talk about it. And of course, we come up with lots of different ways for her to talk about it. And with Shayna, it's about being present, looking up, being in the moment. That's a very different language around all her art.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Very good points. Thank you very much for that. I want to just quickly talk about pillars because people don't understand the different pillars they may have in their business. You have many, I have many in mine, in what I do. But how does someone decide? Is it just based on what someone bought? Because a lot of artists will bounce around. Oh, someone bought this last month, so I'm going to focus on that. And then someone buys something else. I know I have multiple different areas that we do in my art business. So how would someone decide what pillars they might have? Maybe you can use your business if you want as an example, or whatever you
Yeah.
think.
Okay. So first of all, where there's gold, keep digging. That's the first thing I would say. But if you look at brands that are not artist brands, but let's look at Target. Target sells lots of things. You can get a soccer ball, you can get apples, you can get a purse, you can get baby clothes, you can get all these things at Target, right? Tiffany's only sells jewelry. If you want to get a necklace at Tiffany's, it's going to cost you a lot more than a necklace at Target. And being known for that one thing, you can create a much higher luxury brand. And it's much easier to build a business as an artist if you are focusing on the luxury market than trying to be the target for the art collector.
We often start with the target. We often become the target early on. Sometimes it switches. I know for myself, when I started doing my art business, I was selling, I like to do old buildings. I was doing a lot of landscape work, pen and ink landscapes, that kind of stuff. That is my hobby now. I switched to cartooning because I put out a cartoon series early, in 2007, 2008, and switched to, so now I'm a caricature artist. I actually, the old buildings and stuff I draw for myself in my sketchbook. I don't sell them anymore. But that's what I used. So I've switched, and now in the caricature world, we only offer certain things within caricature, right? Like entertainment or gift caricature, that kind of, it's all to do with caricatures and cartooning. So I've had to switch. I've switched mid-career. Could somebody do that? Is that possible to do? I know I did it, but who knows what?
Yeah,
by what I did.
And I want to make sure the listeners understand. I am not saying don't experiment. Absolutely experiment. Absolutely evolve as an artist. Like I know we're speaking right now to a lot of different kinds of artists. Like the Beatles evolved, like Picasso evolved. Artists and brands evolve over time. That's fine. But what you don't want to do is to present all your experiments together, because then the collector can't take you seriously.
Right.
Or if we're talking about music, like if you have, well, this is my, I wrote this sonatina over here, and then I have, I don't know, just making stuff up because I'm not really a composer musician, but then I have this pop song over there, and people can't take you seriously because they don't know what it is you represent.
Right.
And you come across as kind of like being the flea market or a garage sale, like just let's see what sticks to the wall. So what I tell artists when they're still trying to figure it out, because when it's hard when you're first starting out, is you can experiment as much as you want, but when you go to market, you're only marketing one collection of whatever that thing is at a time.
Right. Yeah. And you have to become known for something. Like you're saying, there should be one central thing that is running through all the time, right? That people know you for sure. I think it's great. Yeah, some great information. I mean, I think that people are gonna now you work with other artists, so give us an idea of how your program works. I've got your book here, which I think is great, called The Entrepreneur. This one here, I'm looking forward to. Just arrived today, so I haven't got into it yet. But thank you so much for that. But you've got a podcast, you've got books, you've got courses. Tell people the best way to kind of start working with you, because I think this stuff is what a lot of people don't think about when they think about becoming an artist. They focus on the craft, which is important, but after a while, you need to focus on the marketing and the business side in order for it to work for you.
Yeah. So if you like what I said today, there's more of that on The Inspiration Place, which is both podcast and video form, YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you want my free masterclass, how to sell more art without being Insta famous, you can go to schulmanart.com. That's SCHULMANART, schulmanart.com/sell-more-art. That will take you through the 5 foundations for every thriving business. And it follows along the same principles in the book. Both the book and the masterclass are geared to no matter what kind of art you create, whether you are a musician or a writer or a visual artist. The people, though, I do work with inside of my programs are visual.
All right. That was a great interview with Miriam. Go and check that out. And again, check out her artwork at schulmanart.com. You can check out her book on the front probably. You can check out her book, The Artpreneur, on our website under Creative Picks. You can also, I'm sure, buy it at schulmanart.com. Thanks for listening. Check out her podcast, The Inspiration Place Podcast. I've listened to it myself. It's a good show. And friends, subscribe to the podcast wherever you're getting your podcasts. So jump on every episode with some amazing artists, authors, and musicians. Bye for now.